Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Krino Show. Episode 1. My guest today is a lifelong educator. She earned her educational doctorate through the University of Southern California. She has worked at all levels of education from elementary up through university, both public and private. She's been a teacher and a principal. She's literally done it all. And she's one of my best friends. So please welcome my very first guest, Dr. Kalim Rayburn. Kalim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's a early morning for both of us.
Yes.
It's like 11 a.m.
Right.
But it's early for me. So you're just a very busy person. So you've done everything in education. You're Latina. You're bilingual. You've golfed in the NCAA. And so why did you get into education in the first place?
I think education found me. It was the part of the universal plan. But I think my grandmother was an adult school educator. My aunt was a kindergarten teacher. And I think the value system that I had growing up with my grandmother instilling how important going to college and preparing a career first before starting a family was. So education, was always a top priority in my family. And being a firstborn child and grandchild, that was, the trajectory that I was on. So I think we shared earlier that the day I was home with the Challenger exploded back in the 80s and Krista McAuliffe going up in space, and I wanted to be an astronaut at the time. So then you put that together. I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll be the next astronaut educator to go up to space. So being an educator was just as impactful because now I get to prepare those students who wanted to be the next astronaut.
Yeah, certainly. Like just inspiring the younger generation, it sounds like.
Right there. Yeah, I get to be an inspiration.
Yeah. Well, it's funny about Krista McAuliffe. She made astronauts something that was more accessible. So I think when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut as well. And seeing a teacher go up in the spaceship was like it could have been anybody's teacher. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that's beautiful about the education profession is that they expose you to so much.
Right.
And things that aren't necessarily accessible to the average person or to even to successful people. When you see a teacher do it, it's like because we all have teachers, mm-hmm. and I think they're sort of like the avenue to introduce us to the world. And so I just think that's I think that's fantastic. So right. I think it's an impressive thing that you've done. So what motivates you to continue? So you've been doing this now for, what is it, 25 years now? Because you started when you were what? Straight
out of college.
Yeah.
Well, I started as a teacher's aide through college.
Okay.
So you could look at that as 1993 as a teacher's aide, right? So 18 years old. And then through college, how old are we these days? Does it all stand still during the pandemic?
Pushing half a century at this point.
Oh, gosh. So, yeah, I've been, since, I first was a, teacher's aide, that's where it started. And in 98, when I was finishing college, they had gone through class size reduction, and as well as there was a teacher shortage. So I went right into the classroom at 21 years old, right out of college, on an emergency credential. It's because they couldn't find enough teachers to fill the demand. And I was fortunate to go right into the kindergarten classroom where I had been a teacher's aide. So I already knew the school culture, I already knew the community, and it was through that experience going from teacher's aide to teacher where I said, I was observing the principal, and I thought, I want to be a principal next, and how can I be the very best principal? And that's when I started researching the top program in the country for education leadership, and that's where I landed at University of Wisconsin. So why do I keep going, you ask, is I think that's that competitive nature I have. Why stop? Right? There's always so much more to uncover, and we all have so much more potential that we haven't even tapped into ourselves, and I think we'll stop, as we always talk about the day we retire, or the day when we're just, all right, kind of like that Forrest Gump, we run, and then, okay, I'm done now. So I think as long as the field will still have me, I'm still going to go after it.
Well, I think that's funny you said that it's a natural competitive edge that you have that motivates you to continue. And I think it's hard to put to words, but I asked you like what motivates you to continue, and you referenced a sort of a natural internal drive that you have. And I don't think that's something that people really equate with teaching per se. People don't like to think of it as, or at least I have never thought of it as being something that requires a natural competitive nature, but it certainly seems to have helped you out. You've gone from teaching kindergarten at public schools to getting your EDD at
USC
and teaching now at the university level.
Correct.
And being a principal as well. And so even people who have that natural competitive nature, there's something that they can offer to the educational institution.
Right. And we call that drive intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
And we all have it within us. And so I look at, how do you teach it? How do you teach people to be motivated?
Yeah, how do you teach that?
Right? Think about that. So if I were to look back at all the cheerleaders I had on the sideline, from the positive adult relationships with my family, with the teachers who were creative, who helped shape a vision and inspired me to want to go to school, to the friends and watching how they were doing things. So, you have to have aspirations, and that's where I look at, we've got teachers who thrive and love to be that person who inspires their students at whatever level. And then we have some who may have settled on the profession because it was a convenient profession. But I think I attribute it a lot to just being surrounded by those educators that just kept pushing. And have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? Wow, you're really good at this. And the more accolades you are given, the more it continues to drive you to want to be better, because now you've got the people who are cheering you on. You don't want to disappoint them. And then it feels good too. You're like, wow, I never thought I'm capable of doing such a thing.
Right. So what has been your favorite position?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah, because you've done so many.
It's kind of like you just can't choose a favorite child.
Yeah, you can. You
can't. Well, it's funny that and I have been thinking about it, because I think what's strange enough is that I loved being a kindergarten teacher, because here you have students who come in, they're 4.5, 5 years old. I tried to emulate my kindergarten experience, which was, with Miss Da Silva, who I am still in contact with, and we were at Naples Elementary, and I remember her letting me listen to Mickey Mouse Disco and dancing around in underoos, and just building and play, all those different just creative outlets that were in that classroom environment. So you fast forward to me as a 21-year-old kindergarten teacher, my classroom was my canvas. How was I going to emulate that experience? And in a community that was considered, low socioeconomic, and it was also very diverse, according to the Census 2000 report, which found it to be the most diverse quadrant in the country, heavily Latino and African-American populations.
This is in Long Beach?
This is in Long Beach, that also did not get along, and parents were very quick to tell you that. But I really needed to encourage that I don't see it that way, that when we come into this classroom, we are a family. And so creating that family atmosphere, and knowing that those students who I was with for 8 years as a kindergarten teacher, that I was still in contact with a lot of them thanks to social media, and kind of wild to see that they're in their late 20s now, and doing wonderful things, and diverse in their own friendships. They maintain friendships. So I would say that was probably the most rewarding, because that was also the foundation of my profession. That was one where I could really see who I was as that individual professional, and the impact I could make through my own personal energy and zest for the career. And so it catapulted me to where I am today.
Do you find that working with younger kids or teaching younger kids, you can have more of an impact on their lives? Like, what do you see? So you identified as being a kindergarten teacher as one of your favorites, and because you have a bigger impact on them. In what way? Like, I guess what I'm trying to ask, well, I've sort of answered my own question, I guess, at that point. But did you find that was the case, that as they got older, you couldn't have as much of an impact on them? Were there certain phases in students' development where you could jump in there? Because it seems like if you want to be motivated to help people, and that's what it seems like you're saying, there are certain ages when that can happen.
Right.
Obviously, kindergarten's a big one. Were there others along the way that you saw?
No, I would say that at any entry point that I make into a student, a child, an adult's life is my opportunity to see where they are, how do they see themselves in their future, and how can I help support them and play that role in being that motivator, inspiration to them and what they want to do next. And check this out. I was thinking about this like last year. I have covered the entire spectrum of a learner from preschool all the way up to doctoral student. So I've worked with from preschoolers to elementary to middle school, high school, undergrad, college, master's students, and doctoral students.
Yeah, you were even saying today you have students in their 40s.
I have students who are older. I've had a
Yeah.
pastor in my classroom. I said, does this count as church if I'm teaching you? Or he's like, no, it doesn't. You need to go. But, that they've been significantly older than I am, but still people they still crave for inspiration. They still want to know that the individual who stands in front of them or stands with them in their learning environment is going to make that experience meaningful. And I've been in situations where I've had students who, at certain ages, like difficult ages, whatever has happened in those earlier years had hardened them. And so I have to look at it as, how am I going to deprogram this individual? Somebody did something.
You almost have to unteach.
You have to unteach. Oh, a lot.
That's okay. That's an
You have to unteach, right? And in my course, I teach my doctoral students. I have to unteach them from thinking that being a creative individual is possible still. Because, I asked them, when do you think that stopped? When did you stop being creative? Back to kindergarten, we were all in that kindergarten classroom. We've all been in that room. We've all colored. We've all painted. We've all been outside the lines. Who stopped you from being that way?
Yeah, that's interesting. And now that I think about it, those young ages were when you were first introduced to the basic building blocks of life, how to be friends, how to treat others with respect. Mm-hmm. You're introduced, everything's new.
Everything you learned in kindergarten, that's the title of a book.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's a great book. You should read it.
I've heard of the book. I've not read it, but I probably could use to read it actually. But I think that's true. I think instilling those initial values starts at that age. And for me, I never remembered a time when I disliked school. I always was interested in learning everything, and I don't know when that started. Maybe that's because I had a good kindergarten teacher, good first grade, second grade teachers. And so from then on, it was just never a problem. Sure, there were subjects that I was good at or subjects that I was not as good at, but I think just the basic building blocks were started then. And so I think it makes sense that would be your favorite.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and look at this. You could see your most memorable learning experience was high school when you met me.
Well, yeah, of course.
Because there's that future kindergarten teacher who was already teaching you on how to socialize, because that was your first public school experience.
You probably were.
I inducted you into the public school scene, the social scene.
I was private Catholic school.
You are welcome.
Thank you for the first 10 years of my life. You were among the first, probably the first. One of the first friends I met in public school. So yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you turned out all right.
You're on episode 1 for a reason. That's funny. So how about your least favorite? I'm sure there's got to be. Education's a tough industry. What's your least favorite job?
That lasted 5 weeks, and it was because I like to say that my domain of expertise is K-12 education. And, I've been a school leader in a traditional public school, a director of a nonprofit that also served students, and in professor in higher ed. So I thought, how can I continue to grow my practice, where I love the autonomy to create creative learning environments? I know that the traditional public school system was not for me because of all the bureaucracy. And it was really hard to be transformational because there were so many systemic barriers that were hindering it. So, I also neglected to say that I was a private school administrator. So my least favorite was thinking, let me go give this charter school environment a try. So I applied to an independent charter, which means they were unaffiliated to a district, unaffiliated to any other organization. So it was a standalone independent charter, and I was there for 5 weeks. I saw how pretty much indispensable you are. Like you don't have to be there if you don't want to. And yet the accountability was completely focused on state testing and achieving certain percentiles of students showing achievement to prove that the charter school worked. Yet the mask and what I signed up for was a project-based learning school, which a lot of STEM and art and foreign language and athletics. I signed up for that school. But what was happening behind the scene was, that's great and all, but we need to focus on testing.
Oh, okay.
And so I knew it wasn't a fit. I already had a bad taste in my mouth, and it was after 5 weeks I was out.
So was that just a problem with that particular charter school administrator?
Right, and I could say that, as I dove in deeper and learning about the difference between affiliated charters that are affiliated to school districts versus unaffiliated, like this one was, that there's no facilities manager, there's no janitorial department, there's not a so let's just use as an example. You as the principal are in charge of that toilet is exploding, because you can't call a district office to come out and send somebody out there to fix the piping that's broken. And teachers then have to fill in the gaps of any other support system. So a lot of the responsibility fell on the administrator, the principal. And then the teachers, there was no lunch break. We need you to cover duty lunch break. There's no breaks in the day. You're just going forward and onward.
It seems like a factory.
It was a factory, and that's what it felt like. And I then looked at the founders, and I just thought, this is not for me. I'm not going to be a face because I bring this background here. I don't.
Oh, you think they hired you because you were female Latina? You look good on paper, and you were
sure.
the face. But then in the background, they were like, "Hey, we just want to make some money and get some kids."
And I'm asking a lot of questions.
Okay.
Right? I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm not there to do a job. I'm asking, well, this facility is not ready to welcome students. Right? This bathroom is not ready. Doesn't matter. Open the doors. We need that attendance. We need those butts in the seats.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could see that. So
Yeah.
you're going outside of.
I'm not
your
putting that bullseye
purpose.
on my back.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh wow. I know you've had some but how about scariest moments? Because we all see on the news with there's school shootings and violent. Do you ever have any crazy moments like that?
Absolutely.
Oh my God!
I could
tell
say
us.
I've been in a police vehicle in a high-speed chase after doing a home visit with a child who was not being let. Parents were not letting her go to school, so I'd be with the police only to get a call on the police officer's radio. This is a school resource officer, by the way, that is contracted through the police department. So when they talk about defunding police at schools, this is the individual that was by my side when I had to get kids into school and I had to protect kids. So I look at that situation as, can we rethink that? Because I needed my school resource officer, because like for example, in this case, this parent was not letting her child go to school, kept her home. It was not a healthy environment at all. But on the radio, that the panic button had been hit in my school, that they were currently on lockdown, that there was probably somebody armed on the campus. And,
Oh wow.
And so she got it. We looked at that parent, we jumped in the car, and sirens were on. And then everyone, when you go into lockdown, blinds are pulled shut, doors are all locked. You practice that drill. That drill, more important than the fire drill, right? A fire is going to be contained in a room, but that lockdown drill is more important. And so you practice that one monthly. So everyone knew what to do. But of course, you have teachers who are like, is this really happening? I'm getting text messages and I can't respond. We had to have a debrief about it, because when it's not a drill and it's actually happening, they question is this really happening? But scary is being there with the police officers, and it was an open campus, as in open that it wasn't one big, huge building. It was where someone could just hop the fence and have access to any classroom. And I had some challenging parents, right, that have been incarcerated. So, and I've been confronted with them too, coming straight out of jail. But this situation was me with the master key, having a special knock with the police by my side with their guns drawn and going every single door. Was about over a 2-hour process. We'd later find out that it was an accident.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which was, thank God that was the case. But we learned a lot about, the fact that my one kindergarten teacher who I have there, I commended her on keeping kindergarten students so tightly safe in a corner for 2 hours.
That's amazing. I couldn't imagine the fear.
Right. So you go into in that role, you're a protector, and if I were to take one for my students I always played that out, that that was what I was meant to do. That was God's plan for me. This is how it's going to happen. But there was never fear when that situation happens. I trusted the police officers that were with me. I knew that they would protect me. And, even they would always say that they would love working with me because everything was very organized and everything had the right process in place and protocol. And I worked closely with them to have it. So it was, in essence, it was a really great practice of something that, we don't want to ever happen, but should it ever happen, we know that we are very well prepared.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how training kicks in. If you have the proper training and you're prepared, when these scary things happen, you become hyper focused.
Yes.
The few times I've had that experience, like in combat or flying in the military, it's been that.
Right.
But nothing can substitute for preparation. It's just the natural fallback that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's amazing, and glad to see that you
Live
had
to tell
that
about
protector mentality too.
Yes.
Like you know how you would react in that situation, and you've been tested. So I think that's impressive.
Right.
But I want to shift gears a little bit here. So we've talked about you for a while. Let's learn about the system.
Okay.
So if we're going to teach people about the intricacies of of education in general, so we have public, we have charter, we have private. Are those the three broad categories as you would describe it?
Right, and we can even say homeschooling because that's starting to
yeah,
show. That's on the horizon now. I think
know that's amazing how
gaining momentum.
It is. I mean, homeschooling used to be for the religious and just the weirdos, and now people are going, "Oh man, like this traditional public school system or this traditional schooling system doesn't matter who's doing it, isn't quite working out."
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, actually, we'll go right to that topic. So with COVID-19's forcing everything online. How do we teach online? Because we've talked about this before. I would think you have a teacher and you have 30 kids in a classroom and you're trying to make it all happen. How does a teacher do it effectively? Because I see these articles saying online education's a disaster and it's not working. What's really going on?
Well, in your question alone, what I'm hearing you say is that you think a teacher with 30 students in one room. You're giving an example of a one-size-fits-all vision of it. And that's what distance, remote, online learning, whatever you want to call it, whatever every district is calling it, it's different ways. The media is calling it one way. That's how you should not be looking at it. You should be looking at it, how do you customize your classroom experience in an online platform? And it gives you that opportunity to do so. And so first, with what's happening with COVID, we know that a situation happens in March, and it was a disruption like no other. And my whole dissertation is on online learning and customizing education through online learning. That's the actual title, Customization of Education Through Online Learning. And I studied a traditional public school where the administration that was there worked with just a select few teachers into creating a online learning environment for ninth graders in health class. So they wouldn't have to be subjected to that traditional bricks and mortar 8 to 3 o'clock class. And so my whole study was focused on who are the students that were accessing this online class. And so when I first started my research, it'd be 3 years later that they would have grown the program to include PE, to math, and it would now be from high school all the way to middle school. And so what I found out that the students who were applying ended up being very motivated. They were involved in other clubs or athletics. We had teen mothers who got themselves in a situation. They still wanted to graduate from high school, so they were able to access school through the online platform. the teachers who were selected to do so, they loved it. They loved that they got to be responsive to their students, the students who sought them out to get their work done. But who didn't approve of it was the teachers union. And that was shared in my interviews, and that's written in there too, that the union did not like, in this specific district, that the teachers were going above and beyond their contractual duty.
Yeah.
But they said, I don't care. This is what's right for students. If I have a student who has to work after school to help support the family, I will be available to them at 8 o'clock if they have a question about their algebra assignment.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me. And that was in my interview of this teacher. So we have to be thoughtful or analytical, knowing that the media puts it out there that it does not work. Well, it's only giving you one way to look at it. And so if you are more invested in this type of learning environment, then you'll know that the teachers who see it as, let me customize my content to meet my students, awesome. This is what I'm talking about. I don't have to live by a script. I don't have to be traditional. I have students who can access me even more. I'm actually in the homes of my kids. So there's a lot of training on, understanding poverty and impoverished communities. And if you think about it, did you ever have a teacher come over to your house when you were in elementary school?
I never did.
Right?
I never did.
Now teachers are in your living room or wherever it is that you are turning on your screen.
Yeah. Well, they can see in the background now. They can see. They can probably get more FaceTime with the parent, because daily it seems. I don't know. Maybe that's not the case.
Right. Well, that's another good point.
Yeah.
So again, online learning means when this happened in March, if school started in September, then you should have established a relationship with your parent community. Right?
That's true. This wasn't just dropped on them.
No.
So they've had a 6 to 9 month relationship with the parent.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So if you had that when this all first happened, schools kind of shut down for 2 weeks so that districts could get organized. And in that 2 weeks, they should have told teachers to reach out to your parents, survey them on what they have access to, what devices. All you need is a smartphone.
Yeah.
And we know that it doesn't, we could see, I've seen homeless who have smartphones.
I know.
Right? They know how to find electrical outlets and they're charging them.
Sure.
So all you need is a smartphone.
Yeah, that's the common thing, that poor kids won't have access for online education, which I suppose could be true to an extent, but oh man, everybody has a phone nowadays. It's like, come on.
Right. So that's where it's when we first started this conversation, where did you lose your creativity? So this is a great opportunity for teachers to check back in with their creative side. Yeah. Get creative.
Well, and that was another question that I had, another part of the system. So teachers unions. So we've identified something that's bad about them. They said only teach to your minimum contractual obligation. What's good? Like what do you think is good about them? There's got to be something, because the teachers union wouldn't be so powerful if a lot of people didn't agree with them to some extent.
Right. Well, I think, if you could ever observe the process of what it means to be hired into a district, the union is right there. Actually, it's probably very similar to being hired as a pilot, if you recall your experience when you're doing all your paperwork.
They were helpful, yeah.
They then put you in a room.
Been pretty good.
They then put you in a room and they start talking to you about what the union does for them, and now here's your contribution from your paycheck. So they're there to help negotiate your contract, negotiate your professional development days. They're there to protect you should there ever be any accusations. I know through my experience as a teacher that I felt like if I ever have to be protected, then I'm probably not doing a good job in this. But then we also know that there's people who could easily just make an accusation that's completely false.
Yeah, they could say, "Hey, you're beating my kid, and you weren't."
Right, exactly.
And
so that's where that's where the union would protect you from that. But sadly, what we know is that we have some bad eggs in our profession that you can't touch them at all. That they can, so they're that protected. That they could easily abuse a child, physically abuse a child, engage, smoking marijuana at lunchtime, but they are secure in their position. So I guess you could say what's good about them is that they'll protect you no matter what type of behavior you're engaging in.
Well, if that's a good thing. But yeah, it does. Okay.
My they're protecting the teachers right now. Their work environment has
Yeah.
changed. So now there's a lot of negotiations going on behind the scenes about what are you going to do to compensate the teachers who have to work from home? What are you going to provide them? What resources?
Yeah.
So, I just...
But so you've seen it from a teacher and a principal perspective.
Yes, I have.
So can you give us a feel of both perspectives? How you felt about the union from both perspectives?
Right. Well, they definitely have a lot of free reign when from the principal perspective. That if you have a teacher that you're holding accountable, and that teacher is really close to their union rep, they're probably on speed dial, and so that union rep's going to make their presence known on the campus until you kind of stand down. So that's not fair, right? When you're trying to hold a teacher accountable, and the data would prove it, the evaluations would prove it. From a teacher perspective, I would say I was very distant with it. I just contributed my money, and it was a tax write-off.
Yeah, well, you're a good teacher and a good person, and you didn't need much protection, and
Nope.
it probably worked out, yeah.
I think that knowing who I am, and if I were a teacher in this time, I would, and I know some of my teacher friends who are all about this online. Like, please, can I get online and see my students? Please, can we experiment with new ways to connect with our students? Can we look at curriculum and create it to meet the needs in this online environment? So there's a great opportunity right now, and I know there are teachers who are all about it. Let's get in there and start planning for it. But they've been asked by their union to stand down.
So how do you, so from a principal's perspective, you have a questionable teacher. How do you rate them and discipline them? And if you're a parent, what do you do? Really, I think this is probably the most valuable part of this discussion is what does a parent do?
We need the parent to advocate. We need the parent to stand strong. I mean, depending on the district that you work in, I know I was told that my job is to make sure that I have a really good relationship with my teachers. But in a situation where a parent comes in and discloses something that's happening to her child, that's not right. And if this individual it's never been documented before, well, then I have to take action. Again, it goes back to my value system. This is, in the community I served, low socioeconomic, primarily all Latino families. They were afraid to speak up about what was happening. So I have to support them because, I would go to a district level meetings and I would listen to how my school was the bottom feeding of all the data. They were not achieving at all. What is happening there? What is happening there? Well, then you're looking at the people that they have placed at my school site who don't want to be there. And I'm holding them accountable, yet I'm told to make sure that they like me. Well, I need the parents somehow to be informed that they're the ones who hold the key into any action taking place.
See, I don't think most parents realize that. They just drop their kids off at the local school. Everything should be taken care of. They check out mentally. Mm-hmm. They make sure their child does the homework maybe.
Right.
But I think it just seems like a big system and people don't know what to do. But it sounds like what you're saying is that parents are crucial and they don't know that they're crucial.
Right. Well, in this community, parents weren't educated on how protected
or they're
the teachers
bilingual, or their English is their second language,
Exactly.
and it's even worse.
Right. They've already made sacrifices,
so what do they do?
And they're afraid. Right.
Like, what would they do in your school if there was a person who did not speak Spanish? I mean, it would just seem like...
That was the case. It was a very monolingual campus.
Yeah.
And that was actually the reason why the school wasn't failing. Well, parents don't speak English, so how are we going to communicate with them?
Yeah, well, I think this is what I remember. So when I ran for office in Tucson many years ago, that was an issue, was bilingual or monolingual education. And I always thought, well, immersion is the best way to learn a language. And I think it is. You need some assistance, but I think generally you want to have that first, or English spoken if you want to, in the classroom, if you want to learn English more quickly. But I didn't think about the parent. Mm-hmm. And so you do need administrators to be of the language of parents, or at least have some minimal understanding of it, right, so that parents then feel comfortable navigating the system.
And I would start with those small baby steps in my last position as an administrator. And, there was these mandatory meetings called ELAC, English Language Learners Advisory Council. And these were for all the parents. They come to this meeting and they have specific topics that you're supposed to educate them on. One being attendance, another one being testing. And I thought, this is not enough. Parents are going to get their kids to school. Attendance is going to be there. I don't need to spend an hour of this meeting. What I do need to talk about is understanding independent reading levels. Explaining to parents that learning to read and how important it is, how to create that space in your home for your child to read. How to, whether it's the book is in English and you can't read it to them, how to show them the behaviors of holding a book, tracking the letters. And then explaining that your child is frequently assessed on their reading abilities. That if you have a 4th grader and they bring this book home and it says 2.3 on it, that means that your child is reading at a 2nd grade level in 3 months. The gasp in my audience that day.
I'm sorry, can you explain that again?
Yes.
So you have a 4th, yeah, I'm confused.
Reading, right?
Can
So
you
if I
repeat that?
I went off track, right? But
Okay.
reading levels. That was important. You have to educate your community on the specifics of learning. It's not about going to school, being a good boy, being a good girl, which is important, yes, reading and writing, but there are specific details of being a good reader.
So we could say 4th grade on the title?
No, your child's in 4th grade.
Your child's in 4th grade.
You assume they're reading 4th grade material.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and they could be having an assignment that says 2.3, and that says they're reading
at a 2nd grade level.
2nd grade level in 3 months.
In this case, the majority of the student population were reading below 2 grade levels.
But we keep promoting them now.
It has nothing to do with promotion. It has to do with, again, a system that's saying, oh, this assessment says they're only reading at 2nd grade, so I'm only going to allow this child to read 2nd grade level books. So now you're going to go into 5th grade, and you're still reading at 2nd grade level. What do those books look like? What is your attitude towards reading now?
Yeah.
You hate it.
Yeah. And I hated reading too, but that's a bad...
Right? And then you've got a teacher who's not going to, if you've gone through every grade level and you do not have a learning disability and they've just kept putting you forward with this widening gap of reading, how come the teachers never tackled it and helped you understand and work with the parent on where your specific needs are as a reader?
I guess my question was, why do we keep putting kids in the next grade level? Like, it just seems absurd to me to be in the 4th grade and be reading at the 2nd grade level. Like, why are you in the 4th grade?
Well, because by age you should be. You're gonna drop out at 18, right? We're not trying to create dropouts. Why are we not prescribing the right content for this child?
Yeah.
Why are we giving them a one size fits all?
What if we did, though? Like, what if we did just keep that kid in 2nd grade until they were 12 years old? I mean, it sounds crazy, but why not? I mean, so then they get to say they're 18. And
what does 2nd grade content look like for a 12-year-old?
Oh, I don't know. I think it would...
Can you create it?
No, I can't.
Right? Maybe it's just all art all day.
But what if? I'm just thinking out loud here. What if
it's a silly question.
Is it?
You're going to drop out.
Yeah, I know. You would drop out, but say you never... So you're at 3rd grade, you drop out, and now what? I guess you drop out. But then if you do
Didn't Adam Sandler play this character?
but then if you do graduate...
Billy Madison.
Yeah.
Watch that movie, and that'll tell you what happened.
No, I know I've seen it. It's funny. But I'm thinking under 2 systems. So say you've got one where the kid does get promoted to the 12th grade, does graduate, but still has a 2nd or 3rd grade reading level.
They must be a learning disability.
That's a terrible situation as well.
Right.
It's also terrible to be 18 and dropping out and never have even gotten past the 3rd grade. So I feel like no matter how you slice it, it's going to be a bad situation. So
if you have a child in your classroom, what are you doing to meet their needs?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. That's the answer.
They need a prescription. Yeah. Just like if you have a virus, you need a prescription to get better. They need a prescription because what you've been giving them is not helping.
Yeah. So just kind of shifting gears along here, what about college admissions? Like, when should a parent be worried about that? Because I remember when we were kids, we didn't worry about it until we were probably sophomores in high school, but I feel like now it keeps getting earlier. Is that true?
You could look at, if you had to back it up, when that child leaves 6th grade, we can talk about our fictional student here who's reading at a 3rd grade level, and they're leaving 6th grade, they're automatically going into an intervention class in junior high, which will remove them from any electives, right? The cool classes, your art class, your music class. You are now in intervention class, and now in that circle, you're with other students who are also not succeeding or achieving. You are now in that class, you are now officially tracked from that moment you're in 7th grade into 8th grade. Now, unless there's a miracle that happens and you've gotten the best of the best teacher and you are all of a sudden reading by 8th grade, then you'll be back on track and going into 9th grade in your first year English class. But that's not usually the case. Once you get tracked put into those intervention classes when you're in 7th grade, unless they're giving the cream of the crop teachers teaching that, right, you're stuck in that now through the rest of your high school career.
Will they put the cream of the crop teachers in those?
No.
Oh, so you're kind of just, oh man. So it's sort of like a rich get richer, poor get poor.
Unless you have, I guess you could say that I've just worked for a publishing company where I was training teachers, and there were some fabulous ones, fabulous, above and beyond. And they were working with 9th and 10th graders, and they said, if they're in this class right now, I need to be vigilantly making sure that I get them back into their electives. But I've seen ones where they're just, oh, this is the class I got this year. That's the attitude.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because it's going to require a lot of work. You're going to really have to get into some foundational reading skills and keep this 7th grader engaged, who is also going through other changes in their life, right? So college admissions is a big general topic. So you would need to know that your child is on the right track starting in middle school.
That's early. That's so
but
early.
But because you have to ensure that when their 9th grade year, that they're getting in the right classes their 9th grade year, because their A through G requirements, which are the requirements for graduating and meeting the admission requirements for Cal States or UC schools at minimum, are A through G. So are they getting their 4 years of English, 4 years of math, their 2 to 3 years of foreign language? That's your A through G requirements. And if you're in intervention classes, you're getting pulled from a lot of those classes. You're not in a rigorous English class. You're in a class that's reminding you how to blend sounds.
Wow. So you're building that resume in the 7th grade.
Yep.
Or so if you have some sort of learning disability, you need to nip it in the bud when this kid is 11, 11 years old.
Right. And I've had private school parents who will pay for every resource to support their child in addition to the private school that they're in.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to saturate their child with every resource that they have the means to afford to ensure that their child will be prepared to meet college admission requirements. So that goes back to parents' role in this. They have every right to advocate, I do not want my child in that intervention class. I want them in English class. But are they educated to know to do that? Is the question.
Well, and that brings me to my other topic here is special needs. What does a parent do if they know their kid has a special need? What's the first step? So say you're 4 or 5 years old and your child's not talking at the level they should. Where does a parent start?
Well, they first start by going to their pediatrician.
Okay. And
so they have the official diagnosis, and then they work with their school site. Depending on what school site they're at, a public school will have every type of resource person. And school sites could either they could have special day classes where, depending on if they're a mild, moderate learning disability, or if it's just a disability that they can be in the general ed classroom. If there's mild, moderate, and then there's moderate, severe, there's emotionally disturbed, there's all those different categories, and they usually have like a special day class. But a lot of our schools have moved towards being all-inclusive, to where the special ed teacher now becomes in partnership with the general ed teacher, so that special ed student has access to general ed curriculum, content, and peers. So I've been in a school site where there was a special day class, and I would find it very sad that a 6th grader has only been in a special day class because they had autism since they were in kindergarten. So they have completely missed the opportunity to socialize with all other students. So I was also proud to know that I was part of dismantling that system and becoming all-inclusive and supporting all hands on deck.
That's true, because a kid might not be as quick to learn, but they still need the socializing aspect.
Right.
And you got to combine somehow.
Right.
I remember there were kids, like when we were in Wilson in the quad, there would be some special needs kids that we would hang out with at lunch.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think, it goes back to parents and advocating, that they are in partnership with whatever support team they have access to at their school site. And if they have the means, then you afford the extra, right? You go and you go and buy the extra, get the extra tutor, get the extra counselor.
Right. So kind of last topic here on the system itself. Have you studied other countries' systems and what they're doing better than we are, and what we're doing? Like, how do we compare to? I always hear about Finland and the Nordic countries doing really well. Have you studied much on other country systems and what they could be doing, or what we could be doing better?
Not what we could be doing better. I've traveled to China. I've traveled, to Beijing and to Shanghai to learn about their education system.
They just whip kids, right? That's how they do it.
Oh my God. Things that you can say that I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
But check this out. When kids go into middle school, they're already tracked for who's going to the 4-year university and who's going to the vocational track.
Already?
Yes.
That's harsh.
Right. It's your test scores determine that track.
Wow. And when did you visit Beijing?
This was 2008 or 9.
Okay. So not too long ago.
It was after the Olympics was hosted out there. I know that.
That was 08. Yeah.
Okay, so 08. I was there and probably then just right after that.
Okay.
I saw the nest, right? And
yeah.
Their test scores determine what track your child goes into middle school. Everyone has a job in China, right? So even that vocational track is fascinating. Everything from traditional tea making to floral arrangement for the hotel industry, right? Napkin folding, music, and then the 4-year university is a lot of English. Very, everyone's going to be bilingual when you're on that track. And then you can go into the counseling's office and you see all of the American universities posted up there. And I thought, oh, there's the global competition.
Yeah, they're coming over here for sure.
There's the global competition.
Well, we have so many great universities here. Everybody from around the world wants to come here.
And I've trained university professors from Shanghai and Beijing Normal University every summer. They've been coming here, and then I would work with them for a week on campus. But that's right now that's not happening.
Yeah.
But so what can we learn better from that? Well, that system, while it sounds very organized, you still have the parents who have the means to pay for the better test scores to make sure their child's on the 4-year university track.
Oh, that even occurs there?
That even occurs there.
Oh, my gosh.
Right.
In communist China,
yeah,
there is still inequality.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So there you go. That would be the other system I would say I compare it to. But I would say you can study Finland, and I've actually seen I've met a couple entrepreneurs who are creating certain websites out in Finland, but I would say I would rather focus my energy on what we could be doing better here. And in my current role, I get to prepare the future generation teachers. And so how can I prepare them to know that this is how you choose the right learning environment, whether it's public, private, or charter, even nonprofit. This is how you need to know who you are as a professional. Why did you choose this profession? What was really awesome was that when this pandemic started, I was still in spring semester, and I got to completely revamp what the rest of my semester was going to look like. I said, ladies, because it was mostly all women, and they're all elementary, I said, we're switching gears here. I need to make sure that you are prepared to teach online. This will make you a competitive applicant. And so I'm proud to say that a handful have all been hired, and that question came up in their interview, and they stood out. And that's the other piece that's happening is I've also got them understanding what it means to have a side hustle. And I have friends that are pulling their kids out of public school. They're forming their co-ops, and they want to hire certificated teachers to come in and teach them in the afternoons.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
There you go.
Yeah, that's so. We'll shift here to our third major category, more in the political fun stuff. So what do you think is I'll start with the easy one. What do you think is going to happen with traditional public education in light of COVID and online? People pulling their kids out. Do you think that support's going to go down? What do you predict over the next couple of years?
I think so. I think parents are seeing what's going on finally behind the scenes there, who the gatekeepers are.
Yeah. The emperor has no clothes type of thing. Right.
It's happening. And so, greatest disruption ever in our school system. And it really, again, where are you in your creativity? Because those are going to be the most successful teachers right now. Everyone's living and seeing what's happening. my hairdresser, for example, in her online experience environment, her teacher sends her an email saying that her daughter had only spent 8 minutes on this website, this adaptive math website, when she should be on it for 20 minutes. And so she was, my hairdresser always asked me, like, I said, let me compose an email reply for you.
Yeah.
And she's like, would you do that? I said, absolutely, I would do that.
So she was nervous about confronting the teacher,
right?
And this is a upper middle class,
yes,
white family,
yes,
sure.
So again, what's going to happen to this, right? So I said, oh, that's really funny that she's telling you how many minutes. So my questions would be, you as a parent, you'd want to know, well, is it too challenging? What areas, or is it too easy? And she's speeding through it and she's bored. I go, that software program specifically has data that will tell you what your daughter is engaging in, whether she's just speeding through it or she's speeding through it because it's that easy, or she's stuck on something and so she shuts it off. Did she give you any of that information? No, I had no idea that that's what that math software was doing. So that math software is individualizing your daughter's math education. That is valuable data. Your teacher should be using that valuable data to create her math program. So if she's going into multiplication, we need to know, has she successfully mastered addition, double-digit subtraction before she goes into multiplication? Or she has mastered it, she's probably already doing multiplication. She's only telling you that your daughter is not being successful based on the minutes she's been on this program?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So let me draft the email for you. I'll do my best to sound like you and then send it off. So I tried to put on what it would be like to be her as a parent, and she actually was laughing. She's like, you sound just like me. Yeah. And all it was in this email was requesting her plan to see her diagnostic report. And my hairdresser had never seen a diagnostic report. So by asking that kind of put the teacher on alert that mom is onto you right now. And sure enough, her daughter was finishing. It was too easy for her.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I had a similar situation when I was in school where I was just bored. And when you're bored, you talk too much in class, you start throwing things at other kids, and it was on the surface, a disciplinary problem. This is when I was a young kid. But underneath, it was just because I wasn't challenged enough and I wanted to do more, and there's always some root of the problem, and sometimes that root is not a bad thing.
Is that when your parents transferred you over to public high school and you met me? Here's your new challenge.
dealing with this broad over here. That was a challenge, actually.
Here's your first alpha female friendship.
It was a big step. I was in Catholic private school for first through eighth. I didn't go to kindergarten at my Catholic school. I went first grade through eighth grade. Basically the same 25 to 35 kids the whole time. And then went to a Catholic high school with about 500 to 600 kids in downtown Long Beach, which was a little bit of a cultural shock because it was downtown Long Beach. Mm-hmm. Race was prevalent. Like it was much more of a mixed environment. I think in my Catholic school it was mostly white, but it was fairly mixed as well. But definitely when you went down to downtown Long Beach, it was even more so, and I was just exposed to a lot more. Yeah. And which I wanted to bring up a more difficult topic about race. Mm-hmm. How did you have any conflicts like that when you were as an administrator, as a teacher, or how do you walk that fine line?
I saw communities that saw those problems, but I think the one thing that you don't do is avoid it. You say walk a fine line. Like, nope, I confront it. And if I need to understand a background of a family, then I'm going to call and say, help me understand. Help me understand before, because I want to have a conversation. I meet parents where they are, and I express mutual respect. I also know that I have been disrespected, and that's where I would simply say, right now is not a good time. This conversation is over.
Oh, would they disrespect you because you're Latina?
There was never that.
It was never that? Okay.
Well, I could
That's
say
good.
they could judge me that I don't have my own children.
Okay,
right?
so it's not a racial thing. It's more.
You don't even know. You don't even have children. So I could say, well, I've had children more than they've been a parent. As in, if I was 21 and here I am, in my 40s, I've been around kids my entire career, and I've seen them all developmental stages, and I would try to understand the parent better and where they're coming from. So if it's a single parent, they've got a lot of stress. So if I'm going to be the punching bag, by all means, because I need to know where you're coming from, because my concern is your child. And if they're not in that supportive home environment, then I need to make sure that the teacher that they're assigned to is well informed. That I'm going to need them to give an extra, level of love, another extra level of academic support, an extra level of care, right? And so because if this parent is quick to talk to me this way, if I've presented everything as respectfully as possible, then I can't help but think that their child is exposed to this temperament at home.
Okay, so it's just very much individualized
right.
to the family.
Right.
Would you see any conflicts among teachers or between teachers and students where a teacher was judging kids on the basis of their race, or where a kid was wrongly accusing the teacher of judging them on the basis of, would you see that happen? How often would that happen?
Right. And that's where I do get concerned, but I've absolutely seen teachers judging kids based on their race.
Okay.
Right. And that's where, again, facing that on, holding them accountable for it.
Yeah.
But when I think I worry about what we see in the news and what's playing at home today, because we are going to be farther torn apart with what's happening today. Mm-hmm. And we are really missing, and actually deprogramming all the work we did. I think about, I remember, Martin Luther King, and learning everything about Martin Luther King was, to me, probably the most important lessons I experienced in elementary school. But it's not even talked about in school. It wasn't talked about on my campus, and I didn't understand, what is that about?
They don't talk about Martin Luther King. That was all we learned about when I was a kid.
Right.
Well, in terms of race relations.
I think, so I guess you could say even bigger picture, where's social studies, history playing in our curriculum? It's not.
So what? It's not.
Private schools are covering it.
What do they teach in public schools about the 60s and the race relations and movement? And
it's going to be the individual teacher who takes it in their own hands.
They just don't teach it? Or they?
We don't have the curriculum. That could be an excuse. We don't have the curriculum. We don't know what the curriculum is.
That's bizarre to me. So are kids
we're learning about the California missions. That's still a big component in 4th grade.
What do you mean, the
California, learning about all the different missions.
Oh, they teach that?
They still teach the missions, correct.
Oh my God, I don't think I learned much about that. Well, things are reversed now. So if kids want to get a education on race relations and history, they just go online, or it's on their own, so they just get it from traditional media sources?
Yeah, well, and so
social media?
I think, and here's an example. I think I've shared this story with you before. The DREAM Act, and this was back in 2016.
Yeah.
And one of my student teachers, he's teaching high school social studies. So social studies is still a class in high school. And we hear he's in Koreatown, and he's observing all of his 11th graders. They're completely in tears. They cannot move forward because they were just heard through the news that they will be deported. They will not be able to go to college. They will not be able to have access to financial aid resources. So all the sacrifices their family has made, here they are juniors, which is the year you're already identifying what schools you're applying to. He can't teach his content because of what the news is saying about the DREAM Act. So, and immigration policy. So I said, you need to throw everything out, consult with your master teacher, and I need you to go and research all the different immigration policies from all the preceding presidents. So he went as far.
It's probably an eye opener,
right? He went as far back as Bush Senior. So he goes Bush Senior to why am I blanking?
To Clinton,
to Clinton,
yeah,
to Bush Jr.
Obama, yeah.
to Obama, and then to Trump.
Yeah,
and they did a Venn diagram, compare and contrast. And with the power of YouTube, there are vignettes of all of those immigration policies.
Yeah.
And he recorded this lesson as he ended up turning it in. and he learned so much, and the kids were besides themselves. It's been the same messaging all those years.
Yeah, I don't think we teach history very well at all.
No, analyze what you are listening to.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is the media cares about the here and now, and they don't look at the bigger picture, or they'll just look at one specific point in history.
Right.
I know, I'll be the one that's the jerk here, but the 1619 project it's a New York Times project, historical project that says slaves were first brought to the Americas. It wasn't the United States of America, obviously, back then, in 1619, and that's the defining moment in American history. And it's like, well, there's so much that occurred between 1619 and now. Right. So much. You can't just look at one point in history and say, aha, that's the defining moment.
Right.
And that's how we're now defined forever. It's a whole continuum. And if you don't look at the whole thing, like you had just mentioned, even with immigration, regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump or immigration policy, the truth is that it's been an issue for decades. Right. Going back to as far as back as World War II, really. Yeah. When they had visiting worker programs from Mexico and the Bracero program, and then going in through the 80s when we only had maybe 1 million people here that were undocumented / illegal. Right. But it's a building. So I think it's funny when people go back to Reagan, and Reagan's like, oh, we should be more welcoming and open, which I think we should. But the things Reagan said back then are different because the situation was different. And so you march forward all the way to Donald Trump, and maybe he does sound harsh. But it was a building over many, many years to cause him to say what he says, rightly or wrongly, again.
And nothing came forth with that DREAM Act. Everyone's fine, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny you say 1619. I was doing some work in Washington, D.C. over a year ago, and every time I had a break, I would hop in a cab and jam over to a Smithsonian. And so I went to the African American Cultural Center at Smithsonian, and that tells its own story of, from 1619. When you first enter, you have to go down to the basement of that Smithsonian, and you get off the elevator, and they have the sound of the ocean waves. You are on a ship. You are a slave, and you're heading to America. And it just walks you through that story. And as you go up to every level, it's showing how far everyone has come. And that top floor level, you've got all of our, we've got the arts, entertainment, our legends, our poets, our writers, to our athletes.
That's incredible. I've been there, but it's been so long, and they might have rearranged how they've done it. But that's pretty cool. Yeah, so they start you off on the bottom.
You're going down to the basement in the slave ship, and you're going every year. You're going up every year.
I think it's funny, and I'll get a little more controversial here, but have you seen the diagram there that said that what certain aspects of white culture, like I guess it's like a white privilege diagram that was up there in the National African American History Museum. It was on their online site, and it had like science was considered white, hard work is considered white. It's like, oh my God! So I hope we're not going backwards. I'll have to look.
I didn't see that.
I'll send it to you. They've since took it down because a lot of people got angry. It seemed to be saying that science was like a white thing. And I'm like, no, that's a terrible thing to say. And I don't know why the African American History Museum would be pushing this stuff. And so I don't know. I'll have to send it to you, but it's I think it's great how it's arranged now from the bottom of the slave ship up toward the top, because it shows obviously what happened in the beginning, but then it shows the progression.
Right. And it shows the hardship.
You're it's definitely there.
You're seeing the lunch counter.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there, but yet I love how they put a bunch of different dry erase whiteboards throughout there with questions to ponder, to think about. Yeah. And it's encouraging discourse around race relations.
Yeah, well, like
Again,
you said,
don't walk the fine line. Let's sit down and talk about it. And instead, we're shouting about it, and we're watching it on the news. And we shouldn't be shouting about it. We need to have an understanding of each other. We need to define. Yeah. We need to define it, and then everyone does need to look within and see where they play a role in our healing. Yeah.
Well, I think there's also, even to get a little bit deeper, again, I feel like we've gone the right way for the last few decades, but I feel like the last year we're kind of going backwards. and there's almost like a sort of like a weird reverse racism happening, where it's like you're saying now that you have an African American History Museum saying that science is considered white, therefore don't adhere to science. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, no, that's the facts, and science exist regardless of your race, and if anybody pursues these things, they're going to be successful. Mm-hmm. That seemed to be the message of Martin Luther King, which,
right.
So I think that's where we should be going. And then the other weird thing is that there was a story that came out just about a month ago, where a girl was trying to get Merriam-Webster to change the definition of race, or have what she would say is the more accurate definition of racism, which was like any unequal outcome between the races was considered racism. Whereas before I thought it was, well, any prioritizing of people on the basis of race or judging them on the basis of race was racism. So it's like we even have a different definition of racism now. I thought it was prioritizing and judging people on the basis of race was racism, which I would say is bad and we should not do. But now we're saying any sort of unequal outcome means the system is bad, therefore tear down the system. And so I don't know. I feel like the next couple of years are going to be dicey.
Yes. Hopefully we'll have just strong leadership come together.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's definitely needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, oh man, anything else you want to talk about? We've been going longer. We've been going for a while, over an hour.
Really?
Yeah. Any fun? What do you do with the rest of the summer?
Well, we have Wednesdays when you come down here, and we love having you down here.
Yeah.
And
full disclosure, we're friends.
Yes.
We've been best buds for 30 years.
Yep. This is your refugee campus you share down here. It's like, I'm not in LA County, in Orange County. I'm playing golf. I have a couple more weeks in my summer semester, and then fall semesters starting early, so that our classes will end by Thanksgiving, just because of the situation that we're all in right now. So very busy, and then that's what I do at night. And then by day, a company I work for just training faculty who are going online and just doing a lot of instructional design work, supporting even K-12 teachers with their online efforts and creating curriculum and content that transfers into that environment. So I feel like I've just been really busy. And then, as you know, I joined the COVID Canine Club with your little nephew, Albie, here.
I know, little Albie.
Yes. So as everyone has seen all the puppies that came out during this pandemic, and I wanted one before, but definitely more reason because now I have a coworker, and he's very demanding.
Yes. Albie, which was short for...
Albatross.
Which is, I think it's funny.
Yes, well, albatross is the bird, but in Hawaiian culture, it is considered a good omen when you see one. But an albatross in golf is probably one of the most difficult golf shots. It's if you're for example, on a par 5, your second shot goes in the hole. So, right, if you got a 3 on a par 5, that would be considered an eagle. If you got a 4, that'd be considered a birdie.
Isn't that also like a double eagle, an albatross? It's the same thing, but albatross is the better
term. Right.
Okay. Well, we got to keep working on that.
So it's a one-of-a-kind shot, right? So I have a one-of-a-kind puppy, and he's my little mini woodle.
Oh, that's fun. He's too cute. But yeah, we have to get out there and practice more golf.
Yes.
That's what I want to do.
I'm doing all right. I mean, I played from the Blue Tees yesterday. I was
did?
What? Am I back in high school? High school game's coming back.
I shot my 111. So I'm still working on it. Anyway, that's fun. Dr. Kalim Rayburn, thanks for coming on the show. I learned so much, and we'll do it again soon.
Yes, great. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you again.
Bye.
All right, folks, that's it. We'll see you next time. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to The Greg Krino Show. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram